Laurie DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, an illegal immigrant raped a woman and sexually abused a 16-year-old, and another one sexually abused his own stepdaughter. Why can't we get these people out of Britain? What is going on? It's time to end this madness. Plus,
what will you do with illegal migrants who come to our country? What will you do with them? It's a simple question.
His plan is
what will you do with them?
They need to be processed at the moment.
Processed?
They're not.
yes, indeed. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace, isn't it? We do need to put an end to this. I'm also going to be having a little look at this.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace, where I accepted an invitation from His Majesty the King to form the next government of this great nation.
Sir Keir Starmer's first 100 days have been a disaster. I round it all up. Also,
우리의 핵 개발 중단이나 핵 포기는
Ed Miliband wants to give your money to the Taliban and Kim Jong-un to hit his ridiculous net zero target, apparently. And do we really need diversity officers in every workplace? Angela Rayner seems to think so. And what is it with trans activists and pests? Plus, have you ever thought that people in the establishment media might be a bit weird?
The bass in your walk, head to toe. Cover girl, put the bass in your walk.
What are Jeremy Vine and Robert Peston up to? On my panel tonight is political consultant Suzanne Evans, broadcaster Alex Armstrong, and as Labour Minister Bill Rummel. Oh, and why is this Big Brother contestant crying?
I'm not upset about eating it, I'm just more embarrassed.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. You have a right not to be molested by an illegal migrant. Next.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. Back to Patrick very shortly. First, though, a look at the top stories tonight. And a woman who murdered her parents and lived alongside their bodies for 4 years has been jailed for life today. The 36-year-old poisoned her father, then stabbed her mother before building a makeshift tomb for the bodies, concealing her father inside and her mother in a wardrobe. Their remains were then discovered in 2023 when a GP raised concerns about missed appointments. A man in his 60s is still missing tonight, and 3 people are in hospital after a boat capsized in the River Thames this morning. That boat, a rowing boat, was carrying 6 people when it overturned near Sunbury Lock this morning. Emergency services, including the Coast Guard and fire crews, have been at that site all day. The missing man's family's been informed, but at this stage there's no indication of foul play. BBC presenter Jay Blades has pleaded not guilty today to allegations of controlling and coercive behaviour towards his wife. The 54-year-old, best known, of course, for his role on the hit show Repair Shop, is accused of causing his partner Lisa Maurice Boson to fear violence on at least 2 occasions. The judge removed a bail condition that he had to wear an electronic tag and adjourned the case with a possible trial date set for May next year. Well, with 100 days being marked for Sir Keir Starmer in office tomorrow, today he's faced repeated questions about the absence of his new envoy to the nations and regions, Sue Gray. That was at a crucial meeting. Despite being asked if he was embarrassed by her no-show, the Prime Minister focused instead on the event's success, highlighting a £24 billion investment in the UK. When pressed on Sue Gray's severance pay, Sir Keir Starmer again dodged the question. Take a listen.
I set out when we won that election to change the country for the better, to stabilise the economy. And these investments that are coming in day by day, they're a drumbeat into our investment summit on Monday, which is bringing together some of the leading, CEOs across the world. So for everybody listening and watching this who's concerned to know, is there going to be investment in my region? Are there going to be jobs where I live?
Okay.
The answer is today we're going a long way down the road of collaborating to that end.
In the US, Donald Trump's claiming criminal migrants from Venezuela are taking control of Colorado. The former president's currently talking on stage at yet another campaign event. The pictures there, unfortunately, you've got me again, there we are, with the words "End Migrant Crime" being shown on screen behind him, where the podium has also got mugshots of various people on either side of Donald Trump as he is speaking. Meanwhile, earlier, Kamala Harris made her own push in Arizona. Earlier, the Vice President's promised to include a Republican in her cabinet if she is elected. Well, at least you got to see Kamala Harris, if not Donald Trump. President Biden, meanwhile, has ordered tonight the Secret Service to treat Donald Trump like a sitting president for his protection. Emails seen by the Washington Post suggest Trump's campaign has asked for military aircraft, expanded flight restrictions and ballistic glass in 7 battleground states because of what they say are ongoing threats against him, including plots from Iran to assassinate him. And finally, air raid sirens are sounding in central Israel tonight, warning of an infiltration by hostile aircraft, with explosions also reportedly heard from attempts to intercept them. It comes just hours after France, Italy and Spain issued a joint statement accusing Israel of violating humanitarian law. That's after Israel targeted UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. Meanwhile, images have continued to emerge today from strikes on Beirut, which killed 22 people and wounded more than 130. The Israeli military says it was targeting Hezbollah militants, but the area was hit outside the group's stronghold. And we'll just stay on that news from the Middle East for just a few more moments. Israeli military have said in the last few minutes that 2 unmanned aircraft were detected crossing into Israeli territory from Lebanon following those sirens that I mentioned a moment ago. And they say they have successfully intercepted 1 of those aircraft. No casualties at this stage, but we will keep across that and bring you any more news later this hour. That's it from me. Now back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The cancer of illegal migrant sex offenders in Britain gets worse by the day. An Afghan monster who came across the channel raped a 23-year-old woman on a bus and sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl. Rahmat Qalandar was found guilty of rape and indecent assault after a trial at Preston Crown Court and sentenced to 10 years. So you're paying for him to stay in prison. Apparently he'll be deported once his sentence is finished. I mean, why not just get rid of him now? Also, is 10 years really long enough? Our eco-fanatic energy minister, Ed Miliband, is apparently considering doing a deal with the Taliban to import fuel from them. So if Afghanistan is safe enough to trade with, then it must be safe enough to send rapists back to. And then today, this happened. An asylum seeker who sexually attacked his stepdaughter has avoided deportation back to Africa because he needed to give his wife emotional support to look after her children. It was ruled that if the man, originally from Central Africa, was removed, his wife would lose all emotional support and it would negatively affect her children's well-being. I mean, this decision came 3 years, apparently, after he was found guilty of sexual assault of 3 young girls. The Home Office has appealed this decision. But what on earth is going on in our courts? What are our judges up to? And how do these lawyers sleep at night? Politicians and lefty media types want you to believe that these are isolated incidents. But they're not. Yesterday, I rattled off a load. Here's some more. Sudanese Mofasim Abdul Karim was caught last year talking to what he thought was a 14-year-old girl online and attempting to meet her for sex. He received a 20-month suspended sentence. Sadistic Iraqi Abdullah Bilal was jailed for 3 years last month for child cruelty after tying up and gagging a child in Wolverhampton and forcing an object into their mouth. Eritrean Hanok Zerai sexually assaulted 6 women in Brighton in 2022 and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Here is a video that one brave woman took as she tried to fight him off.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me. I don't like being touched.
My sister, yeah?
I don't like being touched, sorry.
Hey.
No. Ow!
Go away!
The fact is, you have been paying for these people to live in Britain and commit these crimes. How many more women and children have to be abused before someone puts a stop to this? Let's get our thoughts on my panellists. Political consultant Suzanne Evans. We've got political commentator Alex Armstrong and former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Suzanne, I'll start with you on this. The absolute scale of this problem, sex attacks by illegal immigrants and asylum seekers, is vast.
I think it is. The trouble is we don't know. And this is, I think, what irritates me more than anything else, is that we don't know the scale of this problem. We see these stories day in, day out. It's like there's a new one every day. Yet the government won't tell us how many people are on their watch list, how many people have got criminal records. We don't know whether they've got criminal records because they've chucked their passports, they've chucked all their papers, they're not who they say they are, they lie about their names, their ages, where they've come from. So we don't know, and yet they're living in their midst. And it's like, you know, the monster next door that might well be there that you just don't know about. You don't know if your family is safe, your child is safe, your friends are safe, your neighbours. None of us know. And this is what makes me absolutely sick. And like you just said, Patrick, how many more people have to die, be sexually assaulted, be maimed, be injured, be kidnapped, whatever it might be, before somebody actually damn well does something?
Why are we paying for this guy to spend the best part of 10 years in prison? That one, the Afghan Channel migrant there who raped a woman at the back of a bus and then sexually assaulted a 16-year-old at the back of the bus. Instead of just deporting him, we're paying for him to be in prison for the next best part of 10 years.
Yeah, it's a middle finger up to the taxpayer, isn't it? It really is. And it's a sign of that justice system that is completely corrupted and no longer fit for purpose. I saw also yesterday there was the story of the migrant who had pushed the postman into the railway on the tube, also now going to prison instead of being immediately deported back to Iraq. The British public are sick of these stories. We have been taken for granted. There's people coming in the hundreds of thousands. We don't know who they are. They chuck their papers into the water as they come over. We have no idea of their criminal records, and many of them get refused asylum in countries like Germany and France. So it is a middle finger up to our country and our weak justice system and our failing immigration system.
Now, look, again, I will stress that, you know, we have people already in this country, you know, Brits, who commit these crimes.
Yeah, but we don't need any more.
Well,
of course.
That's what
We don't need any more.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Look, and the point is, I do wonder, Bill, whether or not actually the previous government, the Tories, definitely, because I tried to get them to reveal the true number of this and they refused to. But whether this Labour government actually is more intent on trying to hide this stuff than tell us about it and deal with it.
No, absolutely not. I mean, look, you know, it's a horrifying case and it's understandable that people get really angry about this. But the law was changed. In 2007, under the last Labour government, the law was changed so that any foreign criminal serving more than 12 months is automatically deported. Theresa May toughened that up in 2012, and after appeal, the vast majority are deported. Now, there's a debate to be had about whether you imprison them here first and ensure that they serve their sentence, and yes, we pay for that, but justice is done, or whether you immediately send them back.
OK, but Suzanne, in the case of the chap from Africa who mentioned there, who had been convicted of sexually abusing 3 girls, including his stepdaughter, upon appeal, he was allowed to stay in Britain because his wife needed emotional support.
Yeah.
So what is going on here with our legal system?
Well, what's going on with our legal system is that actually the perpetrator has more rights than the victim. I think that's self-evidently true now, and I think it has been for some time, really. We've got judges who I don't know who they think their loyalty is to. whether it's some abject idea of the law as it applies to human rights worldwide or what it is, but they're activist judges, not judges who are putting the safety of the British people first. And I just despair because, you know, if I was a judge and I saw a murderer before me in another country or somebody who'd sexually abused a young child, I'd want him sodding well put away for life and I'd want him deported. So what is in the mentality of these idiots that they don't do that? I mean, I'm just incensed by it.
And it's really interesting, we're talking about lefty lawyers and judges, is that actually that the bar is changing its rules, or is trying to change its rules to say, rather than, you know, you should not be racist, essentially, of being a lawyer, which is completely fair, to now say you must further diversity, equity and inclusion objectives. Like, that's going to be part of the bar. So we're going to just be breeding a whole nother generation of extremely lefty lawyers, and they must prove to pass the bar that they have done something to further DEI.
And of course, that's the same with politicians.
You know what,
as well,
I know we
isn't
want
it?
a diet that everything is woe and everything is not working. And we're going to come on to talk about Labour's first 100 days. But do you know, since the general election, the number of deportations of foreign criminals and asylum seekers has gone through the roof. In August, a flight carrying 200 such people to Brazil is the largest flight of deportations we've had on record. There have been similar flights to Vietnam and East Timor, and it's not been communicated effectively.
Yeah, you're right. Look, those things have happened, right? 100% those things have happened. And, you know, it's all very well and good us digging out Labour every now and again or whatever, but, you know, that has happened. The counter to that, I do think, Bill, is that we've also had a couple of record days in the Channel, and all of those people will now be allowed to at least claim asylum. You know, I'll stress again, I'm not trying to say that every single person coming across in a small boat is some kind of sexual predator or anything like that, but we are seeing some of them, and I would like that to be stopped, really, and I don't think that's too much to ask. Look, you know, people, I think, have been demonised about talking about this for far too long, and I have been able to fill on successive nights 2 monologues with a catalogue of examples there, and there are loads more. Yet again this evening I've had to cut stuff out because we haven't got all the time to do it. This is a problem that is larger than anyone would like you to believe.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. And what also is absolutely needs saying, this is not a right-wing issue. You know, if you don't want people raped, if you don't want people sexually assaulted, if you don't want people, even if it might just be something simple as conned out of money, you have to stand against this. It's not right-wing to want to be safe in your own country. And this is the problem. And I think, Bill, you know, this is what Labour has done an awful lot, is demonised people that have complained about mass uncontrolled immigration. It's demonised people who have talked about these boats coming in. You know, we've got the lovies on the other side saying, oh, they're all refugees, they're all coming from terrible war-torn
Do you think
countries.
Labour politicians would feel comfortable standing up and mentioning this stuff, Bill, really?
Yes, I do.
Why don't they, though?
Look, as a Labour MP for 13 years, I debated with my constituents.
What happened to Sarah Champion after the old grooming gang revelation?
Always said it is legitimate to debate immigration and the consequences, and Labour governments have said that as well. But we need total transparency on this. We need the figures to be revealed, but also we need the figures of the success that's taking place in actually deporting people to be revealed as well.
Well, with all due respect as well, your Labour government was a very different Labour government. Tony Blair was actually pretty good at deporting foreign criminals. This Labour government has not taken a tough stance on that. And Tony Blair's gone out and criticised the current Labour Party
We've been in
for that
power
too.
for 99 days. The boat crossings and deportations is going to take time to turn around. But already we've made, I think, a very impressive start, significantly increased deportations. And yes, the last Labour government deported about a third more people than the last Tory government.
Absolutely right.
Each year.
You're absolutely right.
I'm sorry, I see all the time, you see things that, you know, are whipped up into big scandals and they lead the news on other news channels. For me, and I'll make no excuses for this, for me, the idea that we currently have an open-door system that allows an absolute catalogue, a Rolodex full of people who go on to commit the most heinous crimes, put young women and young girls and all of these people in dire risk, that to me should be leading the news every single day.
Yeah, I agree. You know, 1,000 people came over in these boats, mostly young men, just last Saturday. You know, that could be 1,000 rapists, murderers. We just don't know, and that's the problem. And it's all shoved under the carpet. Nobody tells us the truth.
It's not swept under the carpet.
Oh,
this,
it is.
This has got to be tackled. But we've been in power for 99 days. It is going to take time to turn it round.
Well, I have to say, Bill, you know, the first thing Keir Starmer did was scrap the Rwanda plan. Now,
because it wasn't working and it wasn't
deterrent. It wasn't deterrent. There was plenty of evidence to suggest there were migrants queuing up to come over here when Keir Starmer became Prime Minister.
If you've got a 1% chance of being deported, for people travelling thousands of miles across the world, that is not a deterrent. And the deportations have increased since the general election because we've diverted resources from Rwanda to doing...
A guy I mentioned there who thought he was meeting a 14-year-old girl... turned up, and it was one of those groups of people that snare these individuals, right? So he got quite a rude awakening there. He was meeting her conceivably to have sex. 20 months suspended sentence. So, you know, with respect, what message is that? You can come to this country, find your way in however you want to, you know, live here on the taxpayer's dime, you can meet a 14-year-old girl, or you think is a 14-year-old girl, for sex, and then you don't even go to prison. I mean, I find it ridiculous. But anyway, all right, well, look, that's one way to start the show, certainly. I've got loads more stuff coming your way, though. We're going to have a big debate in a second, which I will tell you all about. And there's an astonishing video, which I'll play for you in a little bit as well, of the latest things that trans activists have done. It's, to be honest with you, it's quite disgusting, actually. But before all of that, it is time now for the Great British Giveaway, your chance to win 36 grand in cold, hard cash. Here's all the details that you need to make that money.
Come on, good luck.
Good luck, everybody. I was just thinking of what I would spend that money on. But anyway, still to come. Our mad pursuit towards net zero continues. You couldn't make up what countries the UK could end up cozying up to try and import some energy. Are you ready? North Korea and Afghanistan. Seriously. I'm going to be joined by former Tory MP and soldier Bob Seeley to find out what on earth is going on here. Plus... Yeah, those are live insects, OK? What is it with trans activists and pests? But up next, as employers are made to foot the bill for union diversity pilgrims under Angela Rayner's plans, do we need diversity officers at work? Aisha Ali Khan and Lee Harris go head-to-head. Stay tuned. Well,
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joining us in the studio now to tell the story of his journey is the CEO of Spencer Churchill, Adam Pope. Good morning,
Hello.
Adam.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. And what a story indeed.
It was a culmination of a lot of bad choices, a misspent youth.
When you say misspent youth, what are you referring to? Was it just the people around you? Was it an upbringing situation?
I come from a really good background, a really good family. I was like a one-man gang, basically. I was just on this self-destruction path. I just had these impulses to do certain things. I like fighting, joyriding, that sort of thing. The thing that I nearly got sent to prison for in the end was driving while disqualified, not once, twice, but 3 times. So it took me 3 times to sort of learn my lesson. But yeah, thankfully, it's one of those things where you come to the brink, right, need to make the change, and I've never looked back from that point.
Ironically, you now run this massive law firm, £5 million turnover.
Yeah.
I mean, was it anything to do with your brush with the law and court appearances that inspired you to start a law firm?
Absolutely, yeah. I've always known that I would run my own business one day. I've been fired from every job I've ever had, and I think that was a lot to do with I wanted to do things my way. I had my own ideas. So, yeah, I've been able to channel all of those experiences growing up right through to present day.
You're quite an inspiration. I've got friends who have told me the same thing, older friends who've said they were always judged in school by the choices they made, and they were told you're never going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
What would your words of wisdom be to young ones who are kind of a bit maybe unruly like you were?
I want to share my story that, you know, I've been through a lot of challenging times. I've been homeless, for example. I spent 6 months on the streets, couch surfing. But yeah, it's never too late to start. No matter where you start from, you can still achieve things in life as long as you apply yourself well.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christys, on Thursday as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. this Thursday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Have you ever been in an office with a diversity officer? It's time now for the head-to-head. So Angela Rayner has been doing a shake-up of employment law. The bill would end zero-hour contracts, so-called fire and rehire, as anyone told Sue Gray, and to extend parental leave and sick pay from day one of employment, which sounds good, unless, of course, you ever want to employ anybody, in which case it'll be an absolute nightmare. However, this bill has gone a step further by introducing staff taking part in diversity programmes during working hours, meaning that these diversity believers who work full-time on union duties can legally take time off for equality training paid for by their employer, as well as the accommodation that they have to use whilst they're on that training. So tonight I'm asking, do we actually need diversity officers at work? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. You can tweet us at GBNews. Go and vote in our poll as well. I'm joined now by Labour Party activist Aisha Ali Khan and political commentator Lee Harris. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Lee, I'll start with you. Do we need diversity officers in the workplace, do you think?
No. I mean, we absolutely do not need diversity officers in the workplace. I think it's absolutely ludicrous, it's unnecessary, and actually I think it's mildly offensive that the government thinks that adults need this nonsense to function effectively in the workplace. It's a complete waste of time and money, and as you've rightly pointed out, an extra cost for businesses. I mean, Angela Rayner's employment rights bill, as you've just said, will mean employers will be required by law to allow staff to take part in diversity programs during work hours, and they also have to cover the cost of travel and accommodation. And businesses are already going to be facing increasing costs and taxes, especially with Rachel Reeves' budget just about to come up with a massive tax grab. But there are other reasons why it's just absolutely ludicrous. I mean, in my view, this DEI, diversity, and equity and inclusion, it simply just doesn't work. There's lots of recent studies, certainly in the US, that show that DEI training, it doesn't educate people about bias, and it actually may even do harm.
Right. I'll come back to you, Lee. I will, sorry to cut you off, but I'll come back to you for round two, if that's all right. Aisha, I'll bring you in now. Look, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, OK, so if you become a diversity pilgrim, you get your holiday at work normally, like you would normally get. You get all the entitlement to sick days. But then you also get another few days off on a diversity jolly somewhere around the country, paid for by your employer, plus accommodation. I mean, this is just an excuse to not be in work, isn't it?
No, Patrick, what's making me laugh is your use of language. You're using the word pilgrim and giving it some kind of religious connotation there. These new rules actually are already in place. We're talking about union work. Every single employer has a right to join a union, and if they want to take time off and take part in union activity, they need to seek permission first. They can't just walk out, which is quite misleading. And I think that's one of the things that the the article in the Telegraph implies that you can just pack your things and walk out without giving any notice or seeking permission from your employer if you want to. That's not the case at all. The legislation that's been proposed is obviously going to take place. There's a 2-year consultation period, and at the end, then we'll see what it looks like after 2 years.
Do you think we actually need diversity, whatever you want to call them, officers?
Officers, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good idea. I think, because, I mean, look, I've spent, I'm 44, so that's 30 plus years of working, actually. I don't know the insides out of the employment law myself, and it's important to be able to speak to somebody who does have that knowledge. And the new changes that have come into play or will come into play over the next 2 years and so on, I'd like somebody to be able to explain to me in language I understand what they mean. So absolutely, I have no problems with.
I don't quite get. Look, okay, all right, fair enough. But look, Lee, I would have thought that the diversity stuff in an office is pretty. Do you need a lawyer to tell you whether or not someone's been racist to you? I mean, what's going on there?
No, we're not talking about lawyers in the workplace. We're talking about normal people, co-workers, going and getting training on this.
Right,
sorry,
okay.
Lee.
Right. That's all right. No, go on. Well, Lee, go on. I mean, is this not? Well, I just don't quite see what this brings up. Only a workplace where racism is genuinely prevalent, I would have thought, would need this. I don't quite get who actually would need it.
Exactly. I think we were doing just fine. I know this is slightly abstract. I'll compare it slightly to these ridiculous smoking bans. If you look at a graph, we were actually doing really well by ourselves, right? Lots and lots of people were quitting smoking. It's the same with race inequality and stuff. I think as a nation, we are genuinely getting a lot more aware about being respectful to people. I don't think that this is much of an issue. And it seems like it's infantilizing people. It's ramming it down our throats. I don't know if you saw, there's been a couple of clips on Twitter going around where someone had a secret recording of one of these DEI training sessions. And I was gripped because it was so ridiculous. Walking around explaining to people how it's nice to use people's pronouns and stuff. And there's a lot of people, possibly a bit like me, who would reject that ideology. I don't think there are 200 odd genders. I think that's all blooming ludicrous. I just think everybody just needs to be respectful. If someone wants to be called a different name or addressed as different, of course they probably would be respectful. But I think what these studies are showing, that by ramming it down people's throats, by forcing people to take part in these things, it does actually have the opposite effect. It causes resentment in the workforce, and studies have shown this. It doesn't make businesses more profitable. It causes an extra burden in terms of what the companies have to spend to put all these things in place. I can't think of a single positive reason why any company should have DEI. When I found out the NHS spent 40 million quid a year on DEI stuff. I mean, it's just absolutely ludicrous. I'd prefer them to spend 40 million a year on nurses, for example.
Or keeping us all healthy. I should look. Why should someone who runs a small business who's just about keeping their head above water, be clobbered with this? So at the moment now, apparently under these new laws that are coming in, basically you'll have a day one right to flexible working. Employers can reject those requests for a number of reasons, but let's be honest, you're going to end up in court if you do, so you're probably not. You're going to have the right to take companies to court for unfair dismissal from the first day of their employment. You've got fire and rehire being banned. All right, I did make a joke earlier, as anyone told Sue Gray that. But why should an employer who's maybe struggling now be forced to allow an employee to take additional time off so they can go on a diversity course and then have to pay for their hotel accommodation as well?
Like I've explained before, this is something that's already in place, and an employee cannot just pack his or her things and walk out the door without seeking permission from his bosses or her bosses. So going back to what you said about employment rights from day one, again, we have those in place. What we're talking about is the right to take your boss to a tribunal, an employment tribunal. Currently, the limit is 2 years. You have to be in place, working in the same place for at least 2 years before you can raise a grievance and take your boss to court. That was changed under the Conservative 2010 to 2015 coalition with the Lib Dems. Initially, before this change, it was 1 year. Now, my own understanding is over the next 2 years, there's going to be consultations with businesses, small, large,
Well,
medium.
crucially with
And
unions.
these proposals are going to be debated, they're going to be broken down, they're going to be analysed. And my personal opinion is that, well, we will probably be looking at between 6 and 9 months before an employee can take their employer to court.
Okay, well, we'll see. But, I mean, look, the general consensus from business leaders appears to be that this is going to make their lives incredibly miserable when it comes to employing people and
there's lots of positive things that have been recommended. There's lots of positive things.
Okay.
There's a fair trade, there's a fair payment policy. There's going to be a unit set up to tackle people, employers that aren't paying fair pay to their equal pay to their employees.
All right, well,
There's
maybe
lots
the
of
Labour
positive
Party could start with
things that are
itself,
coming
actually,
forward.
because apparently they've actually managed to employ a load of people, the spads behind the scenes, on exactly the same kind of contracts that they oppose in this legislation. But both of you, thank you very much. It is always a pleasure, and thanks for giving up a bit of your Friday night. So great stuff. Right, coming up, the J.K. Rowling Butlins row rumbles on. So staff who told a trans woman that they could not use the women's bathroom were sacked, apparently, by the holiday company. I'm going to be discussing this with activist Katie John Went. Plus... That is absolutely disgusting. I will be revealing exactly what has gone on there. Trans activists releasing some pests into an office space. And at 10 p.m, I'll be celebrating 100 days in office for our dear leader, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. But after the break, I'm going to be joined by former MP and soldier Bob Seeley to ask how on earth the UK could end up in a situation where we could import energy from North Korea and the Taliban. You don't want to miss that.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, this weekend it's going to be some unsettled weather around, but lots of dry and bright weather too, though it is going to still remain cold. At the moment, we've got high pressure to the south of the country and low pressure feeding in across Scotland, bringing an unsettled start to the weekend. And overnight too, as we see plenty of those blustery showers continue to feed across Scotland, some pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland too. These heavy at times, turning quite blustery, even seeing some sleet and snow over the Scottish peaks. But elsewhere, a bit more cloud around tonight, which means things aren't going to get quite as cold, but we may see pockets of frost still across parts of central England and Wales. It will still be a cold start though, perhaps just not quite as frosty, but across Scotland, still plenty of clouds, some longer spells of rain, these heavy at times, as I say, quite blustery under those cloudier skies too. A pretty wet start across Northern Ireland as well, but elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around, some clearer spells. Can't rule out a few showers in parts of England too to start the weekend. Eventually, though, generally that cloud and rain that's generally across Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's slowly sinking its way towards the Scottish borders, northern parts of England. So quite a damp day on offer here. It is going to be clearing the north, still plenty of blustery showers here too. And across England and Wales, still can't rule out a chance of a shower, but across many parts of England and Wales, there'll still be plenty of bright weather. Still feeling cold, a slight improvement in temperatures in the south, but feeling quite nippy in those blustery winds. For Sunday, it's going to be largely dry and bright across the country as we've got high pressure building. That's after quite a cold start, may even see quite a widespread frost in the north. But eventually we'll start to see some higher cloud building from the west as this frontal system tries to move its way in. So plenty of dry and bright weather over the weekend, although cold, and temperatures improving into next week.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, there's been a heck of a lot of net zero madness since Ed Miliband took office, but this one is an absolute beauty. There are plans to import biomass now from Afghanistan, so it's the Taliban, isn't it, and North Korea. Yes, really. The root of the problem, no pun intended, was a report last year that calculated that the UK would need to massively expand the list of nations that we import biomass crops from to meet an increased demand for clean energy, as we continue our never-ending quest for net zero. However, this particular plan has been roundly condemned as bonkers. I mean, it's almost like making our energy security dependent on the kindness of hostile states isn't really the best idea, isn't it? I'm joined now by former Conservative MP and indeed soldier, Bob Seeley. Bob, thank you very much. So just to clarify, Ed Miliband is so keen on hitting a net zero target that he's willing to allow British taxpayers to line the pockets of the Taliban and Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, hi, Patrick, and good evening to your viewers. You know, it's properly barking. You've got to wonder with Ed Miliband, how long before Keir Starmer realises that he's got to do a Sue Gray on Ed Miliband, because he is going to do terrible damage to energy-intensive industries in this country. And look, I mean, I'll fess up, we were going in the wrong direction until probably 2020, when we started reversing our policy, because we were going down this ludicrous sort of zealotry net zero path. And effectively, there was this ideology that if we somehow flagellate ourselves enough, and it's sort of quasi-religious, then somehow we can save the world when we produce 2%, if less, of the world's pollution. So the idea that we can actually save the world is absolutely barking. The zealotry with which we are going after net zero is hugely damaging. We have the most expensive energy in the world for domestic users and for business as well. One of the good things about whoever wins our leadership contest is that come the next election, there's going to be a serious choice between these suicidal policies that we're going after at the moment and a more sensible approach. It can't come soon enough.
I just don't quite understand what the possible justification could be to giving money to Kim Jong-un, who is strongly aligned with both Russia and China, or the Taliban, who are also aligned in that direction. Yeah. I mean, this could have consequences now, Bob.
Hugely, yeah, and it's really bad for our security. I mean, look, North Korea is a regime that starves its own people to death in order to build nuclear weapons that it can threaten the world with, and specifically the United States. It's absolutely barking. But I'm afraid to say this is what happens when you have a bunch of Marxists, people like Ed Miliband, who then effectively have ditched this traditional Marxism and they've adopted this sort of crazy climate ideology. And if you are an ideologue and a zealot, this is the sort of thing which is relatively natural for you. So they've kiboshed nuclear yet again, just as they did in '97. They've kiboshed nuclear energy. And because they are now obsessively, desperately trying to deliver on crazy promises that everyone else in the country, apart from a tiny clique, knows that they can't deliver on, they're going to run us into the ground. It is dangerous stuff, and it is going to kill jobs in many red wall areas.
Well, look, OK, what I will say now is that no doubt Ed Miliband would deny that he is indeed a Marxist. In fact, I think he's been forced to on numerous occasions. But then when you have a look at some of these things that are taking place now, this is a self-inflicted goal. So Ed Miliband will go, well, we've got to do this in order to hit my net zero target. Well, change your target then.
It's crazy. Patrick, we should be onshoring dirty industry. The craziest thing about this, in order to get our own contributions down, we are shutting down energy-intensive industry in Britain. That energy-intensive industry goes sometimes to India, occasionally to Thailand, Bangladesh, but most of the time it goes to China. China is building, I kid you not, 2 coal-fired power stations a week, along with some renewables, in order to to produce the energy, cheap energy, very cheap energy, for the manufactured goods that it sells back to us. So a potential adversary is getting rich, having the jobs with it as well, and polluting the world more than we would. So we need to be onshoring this stuff, because actually we will pollute the world less making these manufactured. And actually, I want these jobs in places like Scarborough and Scunthorpe and Plymouth, rather than in Xinjiang, where it's made with slave labour half the time.
I never thought I would see a Labour minister standing up and celebrating the fact that a coal plant had just shut. I never thought I'd see them celebrating the fact that thousands of people conceivably are going to lose their jobs in places like Aberdeen. I never thought I would see him, championing, spending, can I just add, the entire black hole, £22 billion, on some carbon capture that is A, built by a company from Norway, and B, might not work in the northeast. Now, seemingly giving a load of money to Afghanistan and North Korea if they go through with this, and the evidence suggests that they might. Of course, he will say, and no doubt he will say it until he's blue in the face, that we need to do this because there is a greater good here. The world is going to end if we don't, Bob. And if we get this right now, then actually we'll end up making a load of money going forward, because we'll be a world leader.
No, it really won't. Look, the technology, the stuff that we can do that will make a difference to, quote, save the world, is to produce the technology, including nuclear technology, that these clowns are saying no to. But actually, just forcing Mrs. Miggins to take a heat pump that doesn't blooming work, and shutting down a steer industry in Redcar or in Port Talbot to flog it all to the Chinese so that you can meet some obsessional net zero goal. This is the Labour Party that doesn't speak for working people. This is the Labour Party that speaks for a North London intelligentsia.
100%. This is dinner party stuff. I'm telling you, Bob, this is dinner party circuit stuff. What do? You're in charge. Well, I, Ed Miliband, I increased carbon capture. Yeah, go out and take a referendum, and you ask Mrs. Miggins, as you call her, whether or not she wants a winter fuel payment, or whether she wants to give her money to Kim Jong-un and the Taliban. And I think we know what the result is going to be. Bob, thank you very much. Bob Sealer, former Conservative MP and indeed soldier. There we go. Coming up at 10 p.m, I'm going to be celebrating 100 days in office for our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. And... what is it with trans activists and pests? But next, the bathroom row that is engulfing Butlins. I'm going to be joined by the campaigner for Dialogue, Katie John Wen, to discuss what happened and what happens next. So basically, Butlins sacked quite a few staff, it seems anyway, for denying blokes access to the women's changing rooms. What's the world coming to?
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, Georgia. Your story is incredible. Just remind us of it. You quit running in, was it 2017? Because to be quite frank, your body was knackered, you had injuries, you thought you couldn't go on anymore. But then you started running again at Parkrun in 2022. And of course, this summer at the Olympics, you won bronze.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, it has been a bit of a journey. And yeah, there was a period of time where I stopped running completely. And then Parkrun was just something I got into with my friends, my family, just local community. And I started to see the improvements that led me to get back in contact with my old coach, and just worked my way back up to elite level running and got a bronze medal this summer in Paris.
Did you ever think that would happen when you were beginning to take part in park runs again? Did you ever think you'd be winning bronze in the 1500 metres at the Olympics?
No, not at all. It would have been absolutely bonkers, I think, to think that at the time. It was just building my way up, but it was all about finding happiness in running again. And that's really what parkrun does, I think, really well.
And can you just tell us and the audience what had happened to you in 2017?
So I had been like a good junior athlete. I had gone over to the US on a track scholarship at university, and I just experienced so many different injuries. So various stress fractures in my shins, and I just graduated and just thought there's no way I can run anymore. So took a big break, and then over the past few years, I just got back into running slowly, built it up, and parkrun is just something that is on every Saturday. So many parks across the UK, very accessible, free. So it was just a really good way to get back into a fun but semi-level of competitive running.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Harry Potter author and TERF-in-chief J.K. Rowling has been caught up in another trans row after a music festival held at Skegness Butlins kicked off after a group of 5 trans people were forcibly removed from women's toilets by security guards. So the author tweeted, "Does Butlins think the desire of cross-dressing men to enter women-only spaces is more important than women's and girls' rights to privacy and dignity?" Now, one of the trans women involved then posted a video explaining that some of the guards had been removed from their posts and others were placed under investigation.
Basically, I had a meeting with both Bangface staff and Butlin staff. The 2 security guards giving the most aggro, who were escalating the most. They were removed from the festival staff. They are apparently investigating further. I'm planning to make my own response, I guess, legally.
If you close your eyes, you just wouldn't be able to tell, would you? Should J.K. Rowling be getting involved in these matters, or does it just inflame an already insensitive situation? I'm joined now by campaigner for Dialogue, Katie John Went. Katie, I am looking forward to this dialogue. So, look, come on. Why should... By the way, it turned out some of those security guards were women. OK, so they refused that individual their access, and no doubt a couple of others as well. That's fair enough, isn't it? Why have they got the sack?
Well, as far as I understand it, there's
been a suspension of them, and actually it was a third-party contractor to Butlins, so not directly employed in that sense. And Butlins' response was that this outside agency hadn't followed their policy of inclusion. The whole fight for the last 5, 10, 20 years has been about how do we define inclusion, and when does inclusion intersect with somebody else's existing privacy or rights. But it was interesting that from some of the stories and some of the first testimonials that have been gone around already, that the person was seen going in by one security guard. I don't know their gender, but I'm assuming this first one was a man or something. But anyway, complaining that the first person going in had facial hair and dragging them out. And actually, then it was this group of 5. And then some of the reports are actually saying that some of the people in the actual toilets already, the women, they're not the trans people, but the women in there were just saying, just let them pee, leave them alone. So actually, there was no internal complaint coming from the toilet. And this wasn't a thing.
I can understand that, but I don't think we should be relying on women who are using the women's toilets to make the complaints themselves. And apparently, what they were told, these trans people, was that, look, we do have a separate toilet for yourselves, which is normally what you would call the disabled toilet, but in this case, like a third space that you can use. And they didn't want to use that. And look, I would question whether or not, or why, indeed, a man would be so desperate to go into a women's toilet when there is a third space on offer. Does that not set alarm bells off for people?
Yes and no, because I mean I've been following the fact that this always comes back down to toilets for about the last 20 years. There were cases sort of 15 odd years ago where employers had someone transition at work and then they said, all right, well, we haven't got a toilet space for you. We don't want you using the women's. So we are going to make you use the disabled. And the way the law was worded, the way the Equality Act was worded, and the way the Gender Recognition Act was worded meant that actually those companies that back then, 15 years ago, forced the transgender employee to use the third-party kind of toilets. They were the ones that ended up having to kind of pay out damages and the rest of it. So if we're going to say what's the law or what's social kind of responsibility, they're two different things. So the actual law is still unclear even to this day.
Do you not think, though, the message that this sends out to security guards now, conceivably just every single nightclub, every single bar, everywhere, is if a bloke with a beard tries to walk into the women's toilets, you can't stop them because you might get suspended. And that's quite a dangerous place to be, isn't it?
Well, that is a fear factor, but I also recall situations 15 odd years ago when I was in pubs that were LGBT run but not exclusively LGBT population on a particular thing, such as a drag night, a karaoke night, or a night that had a higher than average larger number of LGBT folk there. Back in the days when we all got on, so not the last 10 years, but so 10 to 20 years ago, and we would go in there and you would see a mixture of people performing at drag karaoke, a mixture of trans people and a mixture of butch people as well, using a variety of toilets in there. And I remember actually people being called and complaining about some of the butch women going in and saying, why are the men in the women's? And it was turned out to be butch women. So when people are stereotyping, when people are kind of judging by appearance, but yes, I totally get why someone would initially respond to someone with facial hair going into the women's, and I totally get that when they're in their rights, but it was the heavy-handedness that caused it to kick off.
Katie, thank you very much. Katie John went there. Great to have you on the show. Coming up, I'll be joined by Mark Littlewood, a fan favourite, to ask if the UK is becoming a sick note nation. Plus,
Put the bass in your walk, head to toe.
is Jeremy Vine a little bit weird? And I'll be assessing Keir Starmer's first 100 days.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, this weekend it's going to be some unsettled weather around, but lots of dry and bright weather too, though it is going to still remain cold. At the moment, we've got high pressure to the south of the country and low pressure feeding in across Scotland, bringing an unsettled start to the weekend. And overnight too, as we see plenty of those blustery showers continue to feed across Scotland, some pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland too. These heavy at times, turning quite blustery, even seeing some sleet and snow over the Scottish peaks. But elsewhere, a bit more cloud around tonight, which means things aren't going to get quite as cold, but we may see pockets of frost still across parts of central England and Wales. It will still be a cold start, though, perhaps just not quite as frosty. But across Scotland, still plenty of clouds, some longer spells of rain, these heavy at times, as I say, quite blustery under those cloudier skies too. A pretty wet start across Northern Ireland as well, but elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around, some clearer spells. Can't rule out a few showers in parts of England too to start the weekend. Eventually, though, generally that cloud and rain that's generally across Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's slowly sinking its way towards the Scottish borders, northern parts of England. So quite a damp day on offer here. It is going to be clearing the north, still plenty of blustery showers here too. And across England and Wales, still can't rule out a chance of a shower, but across many parts of England and Wales, there'll still be plenty of bright weather. Still feeling cold, a slight improvement in temperatures in the south, but feeling quite nippy in those blustery winds. For Sunday, it's going to be largely dry and bright across the country as we've got high pressure building. That's after quite a cold start, may even see quite a widespread frost in the north. But eventually we'll start to see some higher cloud building from the west as this frontal system tries to move its way in. So plenty of dry and bright weather over the weekend, although cold, and temperatures improving into next week.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion.
Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight. Yes, well, an illegal immigrant who raped a woman and sexually assaulted a teenager is still in Britain. How much more can we really put up with? Plus,
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace, where I accepted an invitation from His Majesty the King to form the next government of this great nation.
Sir Keir Starmer's first 100 days have been a disaster.
You get it, though.
Every day.
Do you get how it looks?
If you're putting to me, Beth, that I should have stayed in my Kentish Town home and disrupted my son's GCSEs, that was the right thing to do, then I think you should put that to me.
We've had freebies, haven't we?
You've always been a big Labour man, a pro-Labour man. Yeah. What do you think about the first 100 days? Haven't gone exactly as you expected. Disastrous.
And now even the lefty lovies are turning on him. I round up Starmer's time so far and...
You're ill or have a disability. You must tell Universal Credit as soon as you make your claim or as soon as the illness or disability occurs. This will enable Universal Credit to provide you with the help and support you need.
1 in 12 people will be on sickness benefits by 2030. Is it time to get tough? Plus... I'll reveal exactly what's going on with trans activists and those pests. And are people in the establishment media just a bit weird?
The bass in your walk, head to toe. Cover girl, put the bass in your walk.
Jeremy Vine being a bit odd there and... Robert Peston's narcissistic music experiment was a living hell. On my panel tonight is political consultant Suzanne Evans, broadcaster Alex Armstrong and ex-Labour Minister Bill Ramelow. And why is this Big Brother contestant crying?
I'm not upset about eating it, I'm just more embarrassed.
Get ready, Britain, here we go. For Starmer, it turned out things could only get worse. Next.
Very good evening to you. A quick look at the headlines this evening. And first, if you have been watching closely tonight, you may have noticed a naming error. I can confirm I am Sam Francis, not Sophia Wensler. First, though, Sir Keir Starmer has vowed to invest billions in transport, schools and hospitals, promising not to be knocked off course by recent controversies. In an interview with The Guardian, the Prime Minister's hinted the Chancellor's budget will include significant public investment, he says, saying that it's common sense to build a better future for working people. Tomorrow marks 100 days of Sir Keir Starmer's premiership, and while he has acknowledged it's not gone smoothly, he says he is focused on long-term improvements. In other news tonight, a woman who murdered her parents and lived alongside their bodies for 4 years has been jailed for life. The 36-year-old poisoned her father, then stabbed her mother before building a makeshift tomb for her father and concealing her mother's body in a wardrobe. Their remains were discovered in 2023 when a GP raised concerns about the missing appointments. The BBC presenter Jay Blades has pleaded not guilty to allegations of controlling and coercive behaviour towards his wife. The 54-year-old, best known for his role on the hit show Repair Shop, is accused of causing his partner to fear violence on at least 2 occasions. The judge removed a bail condition that he should wear an electronic tag and adjourned the case today with a possible trial date in May of next year. A man who helped his terminally ill wife to travel to Switzerland to end her life will be allowed to inherit part of her estate, the High Court ruled today. Myra Morris, who had a rare neurological disorder, died by assisted suicide in December 2023. Her husband, Philip, was initially barred from inheriting her estate because of his involvement, but the High Court overruled, highlighting his compassion and reluctance. The case comes as a bill on assisted dying is set to be presented in Parliament next week. In the US, the aftermath of the Hurricane Milton has left not just a trail of destruction, but of misinformation across social media, with AI-generated content fueling theories about so-called weather control. Images you can see here show a flooded Disney World and also manipulated videos of so-called frequency waves, but they've been debunked by experts, but not before gaining millions of views. Lawmakers in the US have condemned the narratives which they say are undermining relief efforts in Florida. The Federal Emergency Agency is also dealing with accusations that diverting funds for its disaster relief is not claims they have accepted. Elon Musk has unveiled a Tesla Cybercab without a steering wheel and an Optimus humanoid robot, announcing the future is here. Tesla launched the much-anticipated Cybercab at a high-profile event in Los Angeles overnight, with CEO Elon Musk saying drivers would be able to make passive income from the new developments. He confirmed that the Cybercab would go into production in 2026 and claimed that it would cost less than £30,000. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll hand you straight back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Keir Starmer has been in power for 100 days. Let's have a look at the record, shall we? We had riots in Leeds that saw a bus torched and police officers chased out of town in an incredibly diverse area. There wasn't a huge response to that from Labour. A female police officer allegedly had her nose broken during the Manchester airport incident. Yvette Cooper called for an investigation into the police. Didn't really say anything about the alleged attackers, though. There have still been no charges. There was the horrific Southport attack and the disorder that followed. Keir Starmer basically called a load of people far right and refused to acknowledge genuine concerns about immigration. He then became nicknamed Two-Tier Keir. He then peddled the line that we were going to have a night of far-right riots across Britain. That didn't happen, did it? And later it was admitted that the list of places where the riots were due to take place was actually fake. Keir Starmer decided to release a load of hardened criminals from prison to free up space. Yeah, there we go. Loads of them have now been recalled, including this chap, a woman beater who was arrested less than 48 hours later. We have had a never-ending cycle of sleaze, cronyism and corruption allegations. Now, these range from the Environment Secretary taking donations from a company that pumps sewage into the waterways. The Business Secretary was accused of cash for access after business leaders were offered the chance to pay £30,000 to have a croissant with him. It emerged Keir Starmer took more freebies than any other MP, more than 100 grand. These included money for his wife's clothes, Taylor Swift tickets, his suit, some glasses, and the use of Wahid Ali's £18 million penthouse. He then became Free Gear Keir. Starmer said he needed it so that his son could revise for his GCSEs. Then it emerged his son's GCSEs finished a month before they finished using Lord Ali's pad. Starmer has now been referred to police over an alleged breach of electoral law and also paid back £6 grand. One of the events he went to for free was Doncaster Races, where he was sworn at. Top donor Lord Ali is now under investigation by the Standards watchdog for allegedly not declaring his financial interest properly. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, denies allegations that she lent on police to provide an armed escort for Taylor Swift on the night that she attended a concert with her husband Ed Balls. Talking of Ed Balls, thousands complained to Ofcom after Cooper was interviewed by her own husband on Good Morning Britain.
Should be done now by the social media companies and the police and the government to stop this happening, because it's been happening for a week.
You're right.
There's loads more sleaze stuff, but I haven't got the time to go into it. But now, 59% of the British public think Labour are sleazy. They cut the winter fuel payment for millions of pensioners. Labour's own research said that 4,000 elderly people would die. They said they needed to do this because the Tories left a £22 billion black hole. But the Treasury is refusing to reveal the details of this black hole. Labour then borrowed £3.1 billion to pay off their union mates. And Ed Miliband spent £22 billion on carbon capture net zero technology that might not work. Talking of Ed Miliband, he is apparently thinking of giving taxpayers' money to the Taliban and North Korea's Kim Jong-un so we can import fuel from them to meet his ridiculous net zero targets. Starmer said he'd smash the gangs. Their top choice for the new head of Border Command was a man who openly referred to himself as being woke. He then turned the job down. And last Saturday, we had a record day for the year, and Channel migrants are openly saying how pleased they are with the Labour government.
The previous government, they wanted to deport us, but now they make the procedure easier for us.
So you like the Labour government? Yes. OK.
Bingo. Starmer and Lammy gave away British sovereign territory without a shot being fired. The Chagos Islands now belong to Mauritius, who are allied to China. This prompted the Spanish to say that they want to put boots on the ground in Gibraltar, and the Argentinian government to demand that we hand over the Falkland Islands. Labour Party conference was a triumph.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
They said they'd pay for more NHS appointments with a non-dom tax hike. Now it's turned out that that won't raise any money. It might actually cost us money, and a record number of millionaires are set to leave the country. Sue Gray has been sacked. Sorry, redeployed. She's now an envoy to the regions. But she didn't turn up to her first day in the job today, and apparently she wants a massive severance package. The top civil servant, Simon Case, resigned. Oh, and Labour are accused of more corruption and cronyism by allegedly putting their mates into top jobs in the civil service. The opinion polls have tanked. Starmer is now less popular than Nigel Farage, and even lovey lefties have turned against him.
You've always been a big Labour man, a pro-Labour man. Yeah. What do you think about the first 100 days? Haven't gone exactly as you'd expected.
Disastrous.
On education, it turned out the report backing Labour's private school VAT hike was written by a minister's close friend. Starmer had pinned all his hopes on kickstarting the economy with a business summit due to take place on Monday. Today, the main company involved pulled out and cancelled a £1 billion investment because Labour ministers slagged off one of their companies. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, asked a Labour spokesperson today if Keir Starmer would have a party to celebrate 100 days in charge. They said no. Well, don't worry, Keir, because we have got you covered. Let me whiz ourselves over to the panel now. I'm going to be talking to Suzanne Evans. I've also got political commentator there, Alex Armstrong, and former Labour Minister Bill Rummel. I don't know if you might be able to see this on the screen here, but we've got a bit of cake on the go and some balloons, so we'll have a little party for Sir Keir. So well done, Sir Keir. Do you want a streamer?
I'll have a streamer.
There you go.
Do you
want one? There you blow it. Yeah, fine, absolutely. Now, just want to dish up the cake. Bill, I know you're mates with Keir, so I've got a card. If you could give him... Would you mind just opening that for us, just while I cut the cake up? Is that all right? It's red velvet, by the way.
In it, has it?
No, it's not. It's not. Just a bit of red velvet for Keir. Let's have a look. What does it say, sorry? Oh, no. No, hang on.
Dream on.
Just hold that. Oh, no, sorry. I've given the wrong one, because let me have a look at that. I meant to get this for Sue Gray, actually. Sorry, it's just this sorry you're leaving. There we go. Bit of red velvet, Bill, for Keir's first 100 days?
Yeah.
Yeah? Bit of red velvet. There you go, mate. It's not been a great start, Bill, has it?
No, it's been brilliant. No, I would be lying if I said the first 100 days have gone well. There have been mistakes. The winter fuel allowance, I think, was the right policy. The threshold was pitched too low. I think the Sue Gray appointment was wrong and was a distraction.
Yeah.
I think delaying the budget for the longest period between a general election and the budget actually taking place, has created a vacuum that hasn't been filled. And the biggest critique I would make is actually of communications. When you're in government, you need to define every day what the government is doing, why it's doing it, how it's doing it. And that has not been effective.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, believe it or not, I think that's the longest monologue I've ever done, and I had to cut stuff out of that. I can't remember a worse start to a government in history. Can you?
I can't, no. I mean, if I could do a musical rendition of how I think it's gone, it's a bit like this.
There you are. Fantastic.
I mean, it has been disastrous. There's been no honeymoon period at all. It's just been one scandal, one, screw up after another. Everybody's terrified about the budget. Businesses are terrified. Homeowners are terrified. Everyone is absolutely terrified. Everything that the government has done has been an abject disaster. I can't ever remember anything like it in the past.
I'm not sure they can recover from this. We're only 100 days in.
I mean, do you know what I was just thinking a second ago is how many caricatures there are now of the front bench. You've got Rachel Thieves, Raver Rayner, you've got two-tier, three-gear, Keir, Lord Ali Bye-Bye. I mean, look, it's just ridiculous. In 100 days, it's become a mockery of itself. This is meant to be the government of change, the government of things can only get better.
The grown-ups.
The grown-ups are in power. And it's become a circus.
Oh, Bill, sorry, just got to interrupt you there, mate, before I go to you, because apparently I'm just getting in my ear now that Keir has actually decided to have a party. And I think we might have a picture. Do we have a picture of this party? Do we? I think it's the one of him and a couple of people there. Oh yeah, there they are.
Oh, very good.
There they are. They're all celebrating happy 100 days, Keir. Brilliant stuff. I mean, even the lovies have turned against him, Bill. Stephen Fry thinks he's rubbish.
Well, look, let me make the case of why I think, your obituaries are premature, and I think the situation can be turned around. I mean, firstly, sorting out the organisation in Downing Street, the appointment of Morgan McSweeney, we get a grip on the communications. Secondly, we focus on delivery. A lot of the things this government has done, like the New Deal for working people, like forcing house building targets to kickstart the economy.
Who are they putting in those houses, Bill?
People who need them in this country, and a real living wage.
There's a lot of talk.
We need to start delivering on all of those things. And you talk about historical precedents. Go back to 1979, where Thatcher's first 18 months were atrocious.
Yeah.
She then got a landslide 3.5 years.
Yeah, but what happened? Because in the meantime, she, I mean, quite clearly, did not give the Falklands back to Argentina, did she? Whereas what Keir Starmer...
we're not going to.
Oh, fine, OK, but they don't want it back now. And Spain, literally an hour before I came on air, have been threatening a hard border now in Gibraltar. Yeah. They also want boots on the ground. And the Chagos Islands were given to Mauritius, which is basically China, without a shot being fired. I mean, some people would argue it's basic borderline treasonous, Bill.
Right. I was the Foreign Office Minister who dealt with the Chagos Islands. They haven't been populated since 1965. There's a world of difference between the Chagos Islands and the Falkland Islands and Gibraltar,
Bill,
which will never be given up by this government.
You're right, but it's precedent, isn't it? It's what it looks like to the Falkland Islands, what it looks like to Argentina. We've got Spain threatening us with a hard border. We set a precedent by doing that.
We don't set a precedent because...
Of course you do. You're saying we're happy to give away land for...
We've got a 99-year lease on the military base in Diego...
Yeah, but the lease is a lease. I can guarantee you that lease will be up for negotiation.
All right, behind the scenes, it's an absolute madness, isn't it? Keir Starmer turned up today to the first one of the regions gathering. He created a job for Sue Gray. He fired and then rehired her. She didn't turn up. She said she was taking a little break, and she apparently wants a massive severance pay. Head of the civil service has gone. Apparently, spads behind the scenes still haven't been paid. I mean, this is a circus.
Well, what, for me, I think sums it up is that even the unions, even the trade unions are complaining about Labour. So they're furious about the abolition of the winter fuel allowance for all pensioners. You've had the Unite General Secretary, Sharon Graham, who's even organised a protest against it outside Downing Street. You've got the GMB union complaining about Ed Miliband's Nut Zero plans because, of course, it's led to things like shutting down the steelworks in Port Talbot. Now, I know that got momentum under the Tories, but Labour could have stopped it if they wanted to. So here we have a government, 100 days, and they're already picking a fight with their supposedly strongest supporters, the trade unions, and even giving public sector workers that massive average 5% pay rise hasn't kept them quiet.
Who are they trying to please, though? But the thing is, who are the Labour Party trying to please, right? Because today there was polling, was it yesterday? I can't remember which day, if it's today or yesterday, that 50% of Labour voters are disappointed. They have buyer's remorse. They they aren't happy. So he's not pleasing Labour voters. He's not definitely not pleasing Tory or right-wing voters.
Just going to try a Victoria sponge, just for Lady Victoria.
Do you know what?
This is Lady Victoria. Do you want one of those?
Yeah,
I just thought I'd get that. And of course, actually, sorry,
and it's free as well, right? So,
sorry, guys, I should have mentioned. I would just like to say a massive thank you to Lord Ali for the cake.
Right.
So thank you, Lord Ali. Cheers, mate. Absolutely spot on.
Do you know what? There's a difference between the froth in the media and what's actually happening on the ground. In my former constituency of Harlow yesterday, there was a council by-election which Labour comfortably won with over 50% of the vote and barely a 1% swing to the Tories. So real people can see through this stuff. But I acknowledge we've got to get better with delivery and we've got to get better with communications, and we can do it.
I mean, you're only 1 point ahead in the polls, Bill.
Well, that's not borne out by our council by-election yesterday.
The council by-election is a very, very isolated thing. I understand what you're trying to say.
They're normally a very good indicator of what's happening in the real world.
But in a lot of the other council elections that took place, Labour have a massive drop with 20, 30 points in some places. So there is different stories wherever you look.
The
narrative is across the country that the polls are down for Labour quite dramatically. Keir Starmer is one of the most unpopular politicians in the country, and the government is unpopular. So the point is that yes, they have lost control of the narrative, absolutely. And can they get back on top of it?
And I think that's the key point. Look, I am not pretending that the first 100 days have been brilliant. I'd be a fool to claim that. But I think on the substance, we're still moving in the right direction for people, with house building, with workers' rights, renationalising rail, a national living wage. We've got to start delivering on that.
100 houses a day to meet those ridiculous targets. It's not going to happen. Every house builder that you know now is posting their trading updates on the London Stock Exchange are saying they're going to be building less houses, fewer houses.
That's the inheritance of the last government. Judge us in 3 years, where I think the situation
800 days, unfeasible. It's not happening.
Look, we have had a party for cake. We asked him earlier, we said, look, are you going to be having a party for your first 100 days? They said no. We threw anyone. I would like to apologise for Keir, though, because this cake has only got one tier. But there we go. And, look, this card was obviously for Sue Gray. I got it mixed up. So he's got Sue Gray's card now. It's a nightmare, isn't it? But, dear Sue, can't wait for your party. Love, Patrick. So there we go. But I'll leave that with you, Bill. Or just thank you, mate. That's all right. Well, look, thank you again, everybody, for laying this on, Lord Ali especially. But talking of free stuff, it is time for the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win 36 grand in cold hard cash. Here's all the details you need to make that money yours.
On demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Coming up, we've got a story involving a trans activist and some insects. Plus...
Put the bass in your walk. Head to toe. Let your whole body talk.
Jeremy Vine a bit weird. Next, though, I'm going to be joined by the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, to debate if the UK is becoming a nation of sick-nos. Patrick Christys tonight.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The former royal correspondent for the Sun newspaper, Charles Ray. Good to see you this morning, Charles. And so good to see Catherine back to work with a hug.
It is. It's fantastic. I mean, there are a few royal jobs that touch at the heartstrings, and this is certainly one of those. And I think it's the first time we've actually seen Catherine back in a royal duty since she herself confirmed that she'd finished chemotherapy.
Done so much, haven't they, the Princess of Wales and the King, to raise awareness for these cancers.
Here we have both the King and Catherine having, explained to the nation and the rest of the world that they were battling or are still battling cancer, just like everyone else.
How sincere is all of this? I mean, it looks like she's a wonderful, kind, caring woman, but I don't know. I've never met her.
Well, she is a wonderful, kind, caring woman. That is without a shadow of a doubt. And William heard about this young lady on a visit to the air ambulance, and they invited her because she's a photographer, so she wanted to take. She has a bucket list and wanted to take pictures of an investiture. I mean, make no mistake, people like Catherine are just absolutely wonderful in what they do and how they do it. I mean, and Catherine is the superstar of the royal family. Of that, there is no doubt.
It's the cockles of my heart, Charles. It really does. It's really good to see you. Thanks very much.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Charles. Thanks. And Liz, who is this 16-year-old amateur photographer who was hugged by Princess of Wales yesterday, has said it was a dream come true.
I bet it was.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Is Britain becoming the sick note nation? Well, that's what we're wondering after a jaw-dropping 1 in 12 of the working age population is due to be on sickness benefits by the end of this decade. However, rather than clamp down on sick note culture, a set of reforms could actually strengthen it, with workers being able to claim sick pay from the first day of a job. One person who hasn't phoned in sick is Mark Littlewood. Thank you very much. Mark, OK, so, look, sick note Britain. What on earth do we do about this? Because 1 in 12 working-age population off sick, which means they're not only not contributing to the economy, we're also paying them for it as well.
Huge problem, Patrick. I mean, it used to be said in the 1970s that Britain was the sick man of Europe, but that was metaphorical. Now it's literal. Look, with these sort of huge numbers, there's probably a wide range of different factors at play. If you start digging down into the statistics, you'll see that there's an increasing number of people off with mental health problems who feel that they can't go back to work. I'm not saying that some of those are not entirely genuine. I'm sure they are. But much harder to diagnose than a physical health problem, probably a bit easier to swing the lead. You can tell if someone's, I don't know, got COVID, it's sort of black and white. Somebody feeling depressed, much harder to measure. It seems to me rather too easy for employees to get a sick note. Doctors will typically sign them off. I mean, they haven't got much skin in the game. I think we need to make it a bit easier for employers to question these sick notes. And let's face it, we have a pretty poor healthcare system compared to the rest of Europe. The NHS produces worse healthcare outcomes than our nearest neighbouring countries. So it's not much surprise that the French and the Germans and the Italians are a bit fitter and healthier than we are. So a whole range of problems. But I think we need probably a tiny bit more carrot, but a lot more stick.
Look, exactly what I was about to say, because there was a clearly defined bit of blue water between Starmer and Sunak at the last election. Sunak's response was to basically get tougher on benefits, and Starmer's response was to say he's going to fix the NHS. So one of them was coming at it from the idea that maybe people are sometimes on the take, and the other guy was coming at it from, no, they're all genuine, and we need to make them healthier. Where are you?
Well, I think that you've got to be very tough on people swinging the lead, right? People who are pulling the wool over our eyes, you know, that needs to be not just weeded out, but quite starkly punished if it is discovered. So there needs to be a deterrent effect there. But I'll say the other thing here is I think there's quite a big grey area. People who are, you know, not necessarily fully fighting fit, perhaps people who have got a modicum of depression, let's say, Those people in the grey area, you need a much better process for getting them back into work. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, for mental health problems, getting back into work is part of the treatment, right? Whereas sitting at home and ruminating adds to the damage. So there is going to be a big grey area here, but I think most of the incentives are in the wrong direction.
It's
too easy
attitude.
to get a stick note on all of the rest of it.
It can be attitude, though, Mark. Honestly, just last one with you, because you know, I talk to a lot of people, especially given this fundraiser that I'm doing for the elderly as well, where they say, you know, they in their generation they just may do. They don't like taking handouts. That seems to have changed, and I wonder if that's because society has changed drastically. If 1 in every 100 people is here illegally, and then 1 in every 12 people is signed off sick, you know, you go outside, you look outside, and you just think, good grief. I mean, what is Britain becoming, really?
Yeah, Patrick, it's a very fair point. And what happens is morale starts to get eaten away at. If you think that everybody else is on the take, then you feel less guilty about doing it yourself. And what we've allowed to grow up is a system in which there are just way too many people on welfare. We need a welfare system that targets those genuinely in need. Let's say, I don't know, the bottom 5–10% of the population, something like that. But it needs to be unusual to be on welfare. And where you are on welfare, typically you should be on welfare for a limited period of time. So we've allowed to grow up a situation in which welfare payments of one sort or other are the norm, and unfortunately sickness is now becoming part of the norm too.
Well, not for you. I've just realised that you're in Mallorca, so fair play on 2 counts, Mark, because you are working on a Friday night from what is presumably a holiday. The other aspect is, if it is a holiday, it's 10:30 in the evening now, which I don't know what makes it where you are, but you are sober enough to talk. So fantastic. Well done. Mark Littlewood there, the director of the Popular Conservatives, working hard. Coming up, we've got a story involving trans activists and insects. Plus...
Put the bass in your walk. Head to toe. Let your whole body talk. Cover girl.
Yeah, what's that then? Anyway, and tonight's Greatest Britain, Unguidi and Jackass. So yes, I've also got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. We've got a big final half hour coming your way. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, this weekend, it's going to be some unsettled weather around, but lots of dry and bright weather too, though it is going to still remain cold. At the moment, we've got high pressure to the south of the country and low pressure feeding in across Scotland, bringing an unsettled start to the weekend. And overnight too, as we see plenty of those blustery showers continue to feed across Scotland, some pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland too. These heavy at times, turning quite blustery, even seeing some sleet and snow over the Scottish peaks. But elsewhere, a bit more cloud around tonight, which means things aren't going to get quite as cold, but we may see pockets of frost still across parts of central England and Wales. It will still be a cold start though, perhaps just not quite as frosty, but across Scotland, still plenty of clouds, some longer spells of rain, these heavy at times, as I say, quite blustery under those cloudier skies too. A pretty wet start across Northern Ireland as well, but elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around, some clearer spells. Can't rule out a few showers in parts of England too to start the weekend. Eventually, though, generally that cloud and rain that's generally across Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's slowly sinking its way towards the Scottish borders, northern parts of England, so quite a damp day on offer here. It is going to be clearing the north, still plenty of blustery showers here too. And across England and Wales, still can't rule out a chance of a shower, but across many parts of England and Wales, there'll still be plenty of bright weather. Still feeling cold, a slight improvement in temperatures in the south, but feeling quite nippy in those blustery winds. For Sunday, it's going to be largely dry and bright across the country as we've got high pressure building. That's after quite a cold start, may even see quite a widespread frost in the north. But eventually we'll start to see some higher cloud building from the west as this frontal system tries to move its way in. So plenty of dry and bright weather over the weekend, although cold, and temperatures improving into next week.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, It happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I've got the very first look at tomorrow's front pages. So let's go. We start with the Daily Mirror. Elton, I don't know how much time I have left. Star opens up about his health, family retiring from touring and, crucially, death. There we go. The Daily Telegraph. £1 billion blow for Starmer's push for growth. This is what I mentioned to you earlier. P&O owner shelves a port expansion because a Labour minister branded him a rogue operator, so things going well. The Times, investment planning chaos as minister insults firm. It's the same story. They say humiliation for Labour. They were about to have this summit where this was the centrepiece, supposedly, and that ain't happening anymore. So there we go. Let's go to the Daily Mail. Now, this is a big one. King Charles. I won't stop Australia ditching the crown. Ahead of his historic tour, King Charles tells activists he has a deep love for the country, but he won't block moves for it to become a republic. Well, let's start with this one. Suzanne, should the King be a bit more bullish about Australia keeping the crown? I mean, this is almost an invitation, isn't it, for them to decide to ditch the crown?
Well, I must admit, I'm not an expert on this kind of thing. I'm not quite sure he could stop it. I don't quite know whether he can or not, but it is very worrying. I think, you know, we've got Labour giving away the Chagos Islands, we've got Argentina, we've got the Falklands, we've got Gibraltar, and now what? King Charles wants us to get rid of Australia.
Well, look, can I get a bit more detail?
He doesn't want it.
Can I get a bit more detail on this? Because look, a lot of people, whilst you know, certainly a big monarchist, fantastic, as I'm sure many people watching this are, have been a little bit squiffy with some of the things that Charles has done. There was the apology, I think, for Ngozi Fulani, a.k.a. Marlene Headley, who turned up at the palace and accused people of being racist. Then we've had apologies for historic wrongs to certain nations, etc. Well, now it emerges... according to this, King Charles wrote a letter to the Australian Republic movement, so they're not on brand, who had written to Buckingham Palace to request a meeting with the monarch when he arrives in Australia. He supposedly saying that he wouldn't stand in their way if they want...
It's a bit of an odd thing to do. I mean, my comment was, before I heard that, was going to be, well, actually, you know, it's pretty politically neutral for him not to get involved in these conversations. He shouldn't, frankly. But to write a letter to your opposition that wants to remove you, that's a bit odd. I mean, but once you do this, you then have to do it for the British Republican societies, right?
But it's a statement of reality. I actually think it's a bit of astute political positioning. And, you know, I doubt Charles initiated that correspondence. I bet he was responding to a letter that they sent to him. And it's a statement of reality. If the Australians vote against the monarchy... And if he'd said, no, I won't allow it, then he would have given massive fuel to their fire.
But that is giving a bit of fuel, saying, I won't stop you with it. And they're going to go, well, King Charles said he won't stop us. So I think, actually, what the Crown should do in this scenario is actually just not respond, which they do a very good job of doing a lot of things where they don't give a comment.
His mother would never have done that.
Yeah.
She would have just played it cool. She would have said something non-committal. I think this is quite worrying.
Quite worrying. Well, it'll be interesting to see what everyone makes of that. That is the big story on the front of the Daily Mail that will be landing on your doorsteps tomorrow if you get it. Yep, the King will not stand in the way if Australia looks to replace him as head of state. Again, this just appears to be coming from the palace. And I wonder what advice these people are taking. We had, frankly, a bit of a cock-up, quite a few cock-ups when it came to the old, you know, the issues with Kate and William and then King Charles's cancer things as well. And this, you know, they've already said that they're not going to call it a walkabout when they go to Australia for a walkabout because that might offend the Aborigine people, which, again, I'm not entirely sure where the clamour for that was coming from. I just this policy of appeasement for me just doesn't seem to work because you think, oh, I'll do it and it'll satisfy people, but then they're not satisfied.
They're never satisfied, though, are they? That's the thing. You give an inch, people want to take a mile, and they want more, they want more. Of course, we've got people in India calling for the crown, the jewel back.
The
Kohinoor,
I have to say, Charles has worked out as a better king than I feared he might be, because I thought he was going to meddle and intervene in politics, and he hasn't done that. I just think this is a bit of PR handling.
Well, we'll see, won't we? And our very own Cameron Walker is off to Australia with the King. So we'll be bringing you updates there. Yeah, he's not sure he's going to be sitting next to him on the flight, but he will be there. And he's going to be bringing us live updates from what proves to be a sensational tour. Apparently he's taking doctors with him as well. It's probably worth just checking in on that, because a lot of people were wondering, weren't they, well, how's his cancer getting on, his treatment getting on? Apparently he's taking doctors with him. So, you know, he obviously feels comfortable, which is good news. Yeah. So there we go. Right, now, here's another little story for you. If more proof was needed that the political class and the kind of, you know, your lovey media types are totally normal people, Robert Peston and Ed Balls have formed a band called Centrist Dads, and Jeremy Vine is dancing around his office in high heels. Now, for TV viewers, unfortunately for you, here are the pictures. Yeah, OK, so on the Peston thing, the band The Centrist Dads, as far as I could tell from Twitter, George Osborne was there. Right. For a start. So that's enough.
Part of the band?
No.
All right.
Just in the crowd, which I think is enough to clear a room in its own right. It also seemed to be a lot of ITV colleagues. So as far as I could gather, it's almost like Peston had gone around like, are you coming to my gig? And I was like, oh, go on then, Robert.
Make sure you enjoy it.
Yeah. Tweet about it, won't you? You'll tweet about it. What do you reckon to Jeremy Vine high heels?
Oh, that's shocking. Weird. I mean, if I put those shoes on, I'd fall over. I couldn't wear those. I mean, they've got no support at all, have they? It's just like strappy bits. But honestly, he looks like an idiot. Sorry, Jeremy, I really quite like you, but you look like an idiot.
I must admit, when you sent it to me saying we're going to be discussing this, I put it on my family WhatsApp group. and I said, look what we're discussing on GB News tonight. And my daughter came back, Dad, you're a total loser.
OK. I won't ask what some of the other responses you get. What do you make of that? I mean, look, by the way, this is not... I've not got anything personally against Jeremy Vine. He does what he does, whatever, fine. But it's a bit weird.
Yeah, it's very eccentric, isn't it? I feel like it's a really poor attempt to be down with the kids. Like, this seems like a very TikTok-style video, and I just think it's going to go down like a lead balloon. Well, it is going down like a lead balloon, isn't it? I mean, your kids have said the same thing.
But also, you and I were talking, Patrick, this must have been pre-planned. Yeah. Because he's a big guy with big feet. You don't get...
Where do you get the
heels like that?
I have to say, on a slightly more serious note...
Where did he get the heels?
On a slightly more serious note as well, I think here we have, again, another man behaving like a stereotype of a ditzy bimbo-esque woman. And I'm afraid that really annoys me.
OK.
Sorry to be serious about it.
Well, no, but I think you've got some skin in the game now when it comes to defending women's rights, so it's fair enough.
I'm sick to death of grown men prancing around, pretending to be a woman and being all girly and bimbo-ish, because that's not what we like, is it?
It's not what you like, actually. No. You're a formidable tour de force. I would not like to get in your way. So there we go. I've got time for something else as well. So I'm sure we've all had an underwhelming sandwich in our time. When we get to the supermarket after the lunch rush, the only options available are what no one else wanted, aren't they? But Big Brother's back on, and this is something that happened in that madhouse.
I'll eat like over 2,000 calories a day, and I have a set amount of protein, set amount of carbs, set amount of fat.
I'm not even upset about eating it. I'm just more embarrassed, and I feel like if people watch this, they're gonna think like, oh, she meat sandwich, and she couldn't even tell.
So she's a vegetarian, and she ate a meat sandwich by mistake, and that was the response. Any veggies in?
No. It's so symptomatic of that generation, though, unfortunately. It's like you cry over anything, victim over anything.
It's the 33-year-old man.
Yeah, well, no, but I'm saying it's my generation, unfortunately. It's symptomatic of a lot of them. Thankfully, I'm not one of those people. I would never cry over a sandwich.
No, just spilt milk. Just spilt
milk.
Yeah, absolutely astonishing, that, I think. All right, guys. Well, look, thank you very much. A lively start to the pay-per-view and whatever Jeremy Vine was doing. So when we come back, I've got a couple more absolute corkers for you. More of Saturday morning's front pages. We will reveal tonight's greatest Bristol Union jackass, and I will also be talking to you about what on earth has gone on with a load of trans activists releasing, well, frankly, wildlife into a room. Stay tuned for that.
GB News Breakfast. breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Young adults spend a few years living away from home at university, those who go to university, but many then have no choice but to move back in with their parents because of the rising cost of renting.
But is this an excuse, and are Gen Z or Z just being lazy?
No, I mean, what do you make of it, Debbie? Because we do have to have some sympathy, don't we, in that, you know, rents are very high, it's very hard to get a mortgage, there are issues there.
I think the push towards young people to go to university as well is not necessarily the right thing for a lot of people, and I think people should start work early. These guys leave their universities with a huge amount of debt, no jobs, or huge rent. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. So I think we've got to look at the work ethic and start it younger. Because I think it's so easy just to move back with your mum and dad, isn't it?
To speak like a Gen Zer, they would say that, well, it's OK for your generation, you had it easy.
Realistically, that isn't quite that true, because a lot of people then didn't go to university. This is a relatively new thing that everybody goes to university.
I have to say, what strikes me today is that you still have, amongst all these problems, not having enough money, going to university when perhaps you shouldn't be, all these sort of issues, you still get all these people saying, well, I'm going to have a year out.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. And I think the thing is, they say, oh, it was easy for you, but it wasn't really. We still had to rent places.
But the thing is with this debate, Debbie, is the generation we're talking about, Gen Z, who we're accusing of being lazy, have been raised by our generation.
Yeah.
So what have we done wrong that, if they are lazier, has made them like that?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, and I've got the final round of front pages for you. So we're going to kickstart this one with the Daily Express. I think this is a really big story, actually. They've got an exclusive with a 13-year-old girl who was found guilty of taking part in the riots. She says, I made a mistake, but I don't deserve a criminal record. They've obviously protected her anonymity in this. The girl, who's aged 13, wept as she was sentenced for violent disorder. She fears for her future after overnight justice left her with a criminal record. I think we'll return to that. I'll just whiz us through, though. The Eye, they go for UK ambulance services hacked by Russian gang linked to the Kremlin. Russian hacking syndicate successfully targets UK ambulances. The Sun have got a really interesting story. If you are a football fan, and specifically a Manchester United fan, which I must admit I am, squeaky bug time. So apparently Manchester United's dressing room was bugged before their Villa match. Prankster claims he hoodwinked Villa staff to sneak in and plant a hidden device 2 days before their 0-0 draw. They call it a shocking security breach. I mean, if they've recorded that and they've been able to find out what Ten Hag's tactics are, could you please release that so that I can find out what it is that he's trying to get the players to do? But anyway, so yeah, slightly more serious story. Let's talk about this. So, look, it is what it says on the tin, really. You've got a 13-year-old girl here, guilty of taking part in a riot. The violent disorder was the charge. She says that, yeah, she made a mistake. She doesn't think she deserves a criminal record. Her parents are mortified. Apparently, they only just discovered that she was involved in the chaos after the police issued a photo of her. So I don't know if it's really a case of, like, you know, well, obviously the parents weren't involved. You know, it wasn't one of them. What do you make of this?
I think it's important that just because someone's 13, I mean, that is, you're 13, you know the difference between right and wrong in a very broad way. I think it's important that nothing didn't happen, as it were. But I think she's got a point to have a criminal record for something when you get caught up in the heat of the moment, as I suspect she did in this particular instance, but then to be saddled with that criminal record for life. I think maybe a couple of nights in the cells might have been enough.
Look, I've just got my team out there who've done incredibly well with this, just to read this in a bit more detail, because we've obviously only got the front page here. And there's something quite startling in this story. It says, this is according to the Express, in a startling revelation, the mum explained that during this investigation, one entry was submitted to their report, the police report, saying both voted Reform UK, i.e. about the parents. Why do you think that's relevant when it comes to all this?
Relevant at all.
Yeah, well, I think there's that picture being painted by the mainstream media trying to connect Nigel Farage quite a lot. I mean, they had the hashtag going around about him, trying to link him and Reform Party voters to violent rioters. I think there's a very, very clear narrative trying to be made there. And, you know, it's certainly not relevant information. And I tend to agree with Suzanne that, like, 13 years old, I actually don't know whether you do always know the difference between right and wrong. You're a child. Of course, it's important that something happened and that there was justice was served in some way, but I think a criminal record of that is going to ruin a whole life.
Totally disagree. I mean, look, you know, in terms of the police asking about how the parents voted, rubbish, and that ought to be investigated. However, actions have consequences, and there is a hypocrisy taking place here. The Daily Express, any other juvenile in any circumstances, they'd be braying from the rooftops that we need tough sentences on these people.
Yeah, and to name them a lot of the time as well. You know, this is the thing. I mean, I've come out and said that kind of stuff massively. You know, when you have someone, normally for a murder, though, to be fair, Bill, but, you know, a murder or something absolutely heinous or some kind of terrorist suspect, those are the kind of crimes. I suppose it's, I mean, she got, I was getting in my ear now, she got a 12-month referral order, which I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure exactly what that is, but I don't think it means time served in a juvenile prison or anything like that. But, yeah, it's a bit of a grey area for me, this. I personally don't necessarily think that... I mean, there's no...
I don't think she did
They're not
anything...
saying that she torched the migrant and settled down or anything, you know.
No, I don't think she was actually actively engaged in physical violence.
It said she was involved in violent
disorder.
Was she?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, she's part of it. She was part of the crowd. She was part of the crowd. Look, you know, actions do have consequences. I don't want to, you know, it is a bit of a grey area because I do call out things a lot of the time when people do stuff like this, and I say, well, they need to be named and shamed and everything. So I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, but I do also think that given everything that was going on at the time and the kind of atmosphere that we were seeing, the idea of a 13-year-old girl who obviously regrets it, I would imagine to the point of never in a million years doing anything like this again. You know, does she have a criminal record for the rest of her life? I can see both sides of it, but I personally... I think when you put it, for me, when you put it alongside some of the other people that we've let walk free or get off or get away with things, it does look
And when you think of the amount of 13-year-old girls in another context that have been the victims and the perpetrators got off scot-free for a very long time, I think it's deeply worrying.
But there's also the responsibility of parents. One of the most shocking cases I saw was the young, I think it was a boy, and he turned up, 12 years old, turned up in court, and the judge refused to sentence because the mother had gone to Ibiza.
I remember.
And you think, in those circumstances, what chances the kids got?
All right, OK, right, now we're going to be on a speed mission here. So trans activists have disrupted an annual conference being held by an organisation called the LGB Alliance by releasing thousands of insects. Here it is. Yeah, well done to one of the people out there as well for coming up with gender critical. That's why they earn the big bucks, yes. Anyway, apparently a bag of insects, crickets, locusts, cockroaches. There he is. Not nice, pleasant. It's almost like they aren't the good guys, isn't it? I mean, to be fair, all joking aside, that is absolutely disgusting. Right, we've only got 2 minutes left, so who are your greatest Britons and Union jackasses, please? Suzanne, I'll start with you.
My greatest Briton today is Commander Yvonne Gray. She was born in Harrogate, but she serves in the New Zealand Navy, and she saved lives when her £60 million vessel ran into a reef and later sunk. She made a very difficult call. She called for abandoned ship in the middle of the night, which is apparently a particularly complex and dangerous task. She also went to Lancaster University, so I've got that in common with her, so that's why she's mine.
Mine's Robert Jenrick. He's taking on the Tory Wets, and shocker, he's in the final two, but I think he's making some strong statements and finally trying to drag the Conservative Party back to where it should be.
OK, go on, Bill.
Joe Root, the England cricketer, who became the highest run scorer of all time in the England team, scored a career-best 262, an absolute run machine and a decent guy.
100%. I'm going to go for Joe Root. One of my claims to fame, by the way, is I caught Joe Root out when I was playing cricket against his school, and he probably wasn't. He obviously wasn't trying, was he? Anyway, right, OK, who's your Union jackass, please?
Nick Clegg, for being an absolute idiot. He works for Meta, as we now know, and he was talking on Twitter about how he couldn't roll out some new AI technology because of in the EU, because the Commission wouldn't let him, but saying we can do it in the UK. So who was the one that didn't want Brexit? Ha ha.
Brexit benefit.
There you go.
30 seconds.
Yeah, mine is Angela Rayner for the front pages tomorrow, as you're going to see. The £1 billion investment that's gone because she had to open a gob.
OK, go on, Bill.
Boris Johnson, whose memoirs are utterly detached from reality, showing he's learnt absolutely nothing.
All right. I'm going to go for Nick Clegg for saying about, you know, how Britain's great now we've got Brexit despite campaigning against it. Thank you. Great show this evening. And thank you most of all for watching and listening. And I'll have a big update for you next week on my sponsored swim for Friends of the Elderly. Stay tuned. Watch this space. See you then.
Thanks.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, this weekend it's going to be some unsettled weather around, but lots of dry and bright weather too, though it is going to still remain cold. At the moment, we've got high pressure to the south of the country and low pressure feeding in across Scotland, bringing an unsettled start to the weekend. And overnight too, as we see plenty of those blustery showers continue to feed across Scotland, some pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland too. These heavy at times, turning quite blustery, even seeing some sleet and snow over the Scottish peaks. But elsewhere, a bit more cloud around tonight, which means things aren't going to get quite as cold, but we may see pockets of frost still across parts of central England and Wales. It will still be a cold start though, perhaps just not quite as frosty, but across Scotland, still plenty of clouds, some longer spells of rain, these heavy at times, as I say, quite blustery under those cloudier skies too. A pretty wet start across Northern Ireland as well, but elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around, some clearer spells. Can't rule out a few showers in parts of England too to start the weekend. Eventually, though, generally that cloud and rain that's generally across Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's slowly sinking its way towards the Scottish borders, northern parts of England, so quite a damp day on offer here. It is going to be clearing the north, still plenty of blustery showers here too. And across England and Wales, still can't rule out a chance of a shower, but across many parts of England and Wales, there'll still be plenty of bright weather. Still feeling cold, a slight improvement in temperatures in the south, but feeling quite nippy in those blustery winds. For Sunday, it's going to be largely dry and bright across the country as we've got high pressure building. That's after quite a cold start, may even see quite a widespread frost in the north. But eventually we'll start to see some higher cloud building from the west as this frontal system tries to move its way in. So plenty of dry and bright weather over the weekend, although cold, and temperatures improving into next week.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather.
You ring demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tell us about this film, because it's obviously come from your own experiences.
We wanted to create something for the entertainment industry that wasn't just another kind of dull documentary. I mean, some of them are brilliant, they're very informative, but you kind of leave a bit bewildered and a little bit kind of flat. So we thought, I've got a passion for writing and you've obviously got an unbounded knowledge on the subject. Why don't we create a film with a kind of satirical look on eating disorders?
So this came it's been made 20 years after your own...
It is 20 years.
20 years,
practically to the day.
So Samantha, you suffered with OCD and an eating disorder as well?
Yes.
And that's when your mum became a counsellor, is that right?
A little bit later on, I think we spent a bit of time in the system and I realised that it wasn't working for us. So I took it on myself to learn as much as I could about the subject.
I call it a tragedy, probably the wrong word, but
suffering. No, it is a tragedy because mental ill health and eating disorders destroy the lives of not only the sufferers but their families as well.
But you've turned that into something so positive and so
It's inspiring. Amazing, really, that 20 years ago our story was just beginning, and 20 years on, we've done what we've done. But I have to say that very little has changed in the system.
I've heard that.
And I think that's what we're passionate about.
Yeah, so...
that was why we wanted to... I mean, I work with families every day and I see the destruction that eating disorders and other mental illnesses not just bring to the sufferer, but the whole family.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really passions me, because obviously 20 years ago we were there. And I just feel that so much more needs to be done. And I think with eating disorders, there is still a lot of misunderstanding around the subject.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. This is your first look at Saturday's newspapers with three comedians. I'm Cressida Wetton and tonight I'm joined by dyed-in-the-wool Conservative Leo Kearse and for balance his bohemian free-spirited mate Nick Dixon.
Are you free-spirited, Nick?
I am, yes. I love life. I just do what I like. Just a happy-go-lucky kind of figure.
Yeah.
That's how I always think of you.
Thank you.
Into the arts and such. OK, right, let's have a look at the front pages from tomorrow. For tomorrow, Daily Mail leads with Charles, I won't stop Australia, ditching Crown. The Sun has squeaky bug time. The Mirror leads with Elton, I don't know how much time I have left. And the auto cue's just having a moment. The Daily Telegraph. Sorry, I'm hearing it in my ear, but it's not loud enough. Guys, can you repeat that? Telegraph, £1 billion blow to Starmer push for growth. The Times has investment plan in chaos as minister insults firm. And finally, we got there. The Daily Star, I saw King fly a UFO. And those were your front pages. OK, let's start with tomorrow's Telegraph, please, Leo.
I just wanted to say, Cressida, you dealt with that teleprompter mishap just as
Almost as well as you dealt with that cake.
Just as well as Kamala Harris did. I'm sorry. OK.
Obama's going to come after you. You have to like women. It's the Lord. Right, get on with it.
OK. So this is the Daily Telegraph. With £1 billion blow to Starmer push for growth. So this is already, the wheels are coming off his plans for growth. This is humiliation for Labour as a £1 billion investment has been pulled after Angela Rayner's attack. So P&O Ferries owner DP World pulled a planned announcement of £1 billion investment in his London Gateway container port following criticism by Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. And DP World boss Sultan Ahmed bin Salayem will no longer attend the event after Miss Rayner called P&O Ferries unscrupulous and exploitative. Oh, they're unscrupulous and exploitative. So this shipping company, ferry company, it sparked controversy in 2022 when it sacked 800 employees and replaced them with cheaper overseas agency staff, which is actually good because when they get raided by Somalian pirates, it'll be like a sort of, get together. But then they won't know who's the pirate.
Well, it doesn't matter why they did it, does it? It's their decision. They've got their own business sense. And here's Labour coming in and criticising them for running their business the way they want to, Nick.
You could say that. I would love to have heard the argument, though, with Rayner just they're unscrupulous, as you just said. And then Starmer going, you've cost us $1 billion. It sounds like Dr. Evil. Anyway, she's not necessarily wrong, though, is she? I mean, when this scandal hit, when they just suddenly sacked 800 employees and replaced them with cheap overseas staff. Everyone was saying the same thing, so she's not necessarily wrong, but is it naive to say it on Wednesday when there's a $1 billion deal pending? One could say it is. Or you could say it's integrity. I mean, we have two clashes of styles here. Starmer's all about pragmatism, at least on business. He's ideological at other times when he's talking about far-right thugs. But here, he's obviously trying to... Yeah, exactly. He's trying to be practical about business. She's just doing, like, classic and kind of, like, I just say what I think. And obviously, they're not on the same page, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, and I think this, as Nick says, this shows the naivety of the government. Angela Rayner in particular, I mean, she's picked because she's terrible. Keir Starmer was like, I need somebody there who's so dismal that even when everybody wants to get rid of me, they won't because they can see who's going to replace me.
Yeah. So is this what you want? And you just point to her.
And the Labour are just doing this sort of Venezuelan speed run. We're gonna collapse harder than Argentina. We're going to need, but the good news is, 5 years' time, we'll get a Millet. We'll get our own Millet coming in to save Britain.
Who's our Millet? Because we've got Farage, we've got Jenrick. Who's it going to be?
Possibly Farage.
For a minute, I thought Leo was going to go back into politics.
Millet's videos are so incredible. Like, I don't know if he's really saying that. You know, they're translating stuff, and I'm like, did he say that? Is that AI? Is that a fake translation? Because it's very rude, a lot of it.
Yeah,
but it's very bold.
Also, he swears like a sailor. He could get a job in these ferries.
True.
OK, let's move on to the Express, please, Nick.
Sure. It's I made a mistake, but I don't deserve a criminal record. This is a girl who's 13 who was sentenced for violent disorder regarding the attacks on asylum seeker hotels. I believe she kicked a door, she mentions in the piece. And the question on everyone's lips is this incredibly harsh? Is a 13-year-old will now have a criminal record whose life will be changed? And, of course, one can say, well, it's terrible what she did. But one can also say...
It was good.
Well, one can also cite... one can cite many examples of the two-tier care, two-tier justice where we see violent criminals going free, very small sentences. Lawson Natty springs to mind, the guy who has handed the machete to... Well, bought the machete that the other guy killed someone. Yeah. He got 6 months for manslaughter.
14-year-old kid killed with a machete, and Keir Starmer lets the guy go free so this 13-year-old can get locked up.
And it's not a great time to be a 13-year-old white girl. You know, you assume she's white since she's been the victim of two-tier justice. In this country, you know, you can be basically raped and tortured on an industrial scale, and the authorities will say, oh, let's not look at that. But you kick a door and you're in big trouble. Now, some people say, this is terrible what she did, but I'm just giving you the full picture.
Yeah.
Well, it's the age, isn't it? That's the thing. We all know she's going to be tainted for the rest of her life. This is going to follow her. It seems inappropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it will taint her or follow her around, but I mean, I just think it's ridiculous
that... It's a record, isn't it? So it's not something...
Yeah, but once people find out, they'll probably buy her a pint. I mean, it's, you know... It's not like, you know, Hugh Edwards or something like that, who actually didn't get any jail time. Hugh Edwards didn't get any jail time for having the